Partly partial sunshine develops a high around 84 degrees.
I should be up
your
now.
latest Chicago weather update. Currently, it's 82.
This is Ron Whittingham, and I'm co-owner of Megan Financial, an independent retirement and financial services firm here in Chicago. We've built our business on playing the long game, teaching financial literacy to our clients to prepare them.
Okay.
Investments, pensions, 401ks, they're all pretty complicated. We make sure that you understand.
Okay, no, Reverend, you keep on talking. I'm sorry.
444.
Testing 1 2 3. 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 Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Sounds great.
Testing 1 2 3. Okie dokie.
Ownership from any other named entity. The views depicted in this broadcast are general in nature and provided for informational use only. The views are not necessarily those of Superior Advisors LLC. They should not be considered as specific investment or tax advice. All information is believed to be from reliable. No representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Keep in mind that investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Investment decisions should be based upon an individual's own goal, time horizon, and tolerance for risk. Consult your investment and/or tax professional regarding your unique situation.
WCPT replay.
You know, when Roe v. Wade was kicked to the curb, it was like, oh, you know, we're just going to let the states make these decisions. But then all of a sudden we heard people saying, well, you know, we should go after gay rights next and let's do total abortion bans. And oh, by the way, you know, maybe we should rethink no fault divorce. And it's like, what else can we do to take this country back to the 50s? If they had just done one or two things here or there, they wouldn't have created this backlash that they are experiencing now, but they just can't stop themselves. Oh, wait a minute, we're not doing abortions. Yes, but they might go out of state. Oh, let's figure out a way to go get them and make their lives miserable. They can't help themselves.
Keep listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Hello? 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 It's me. I mean, it's you. It's your childhood calling.
It's your childhood calling.
Pick up. I'm calling to tell you something very important. It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
The things that happened to you as a kid, the things you went through, they were not your fault.
And you're not alone.
2/3 of us have experienced what is known as adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs.
ACEs are not our fault. They happen to us, yet they can hurt us for our whole lives. But I'm calling to tell you that I've got good news. I'm calling because you're grown up now, and you can be in charge. You can be the author of your own story. Learn how at numberstory.org. Numberstory.org.
This is Morgan Freeman, executive producer of the documentary film The C Word, and I'm here to tell you that defeating cancer takes breakthroughs. A breakthrough is the start of something extraordinary. To be breakthrough is to be brave. Many small breakthroughs can lead inevitably to a big breakthrough, the kinds of breakthroughs that advance the fight against cancer, the ones that save lives by the millions. You are the breakthrough. You, the patients taking part in clinical trials. You, the scientists doing next-level research to beat cancer. You, the doctors and nurses who tirelessly care for everyone along the way. Let's be the breakthrough.
To learn about screenings and clinical trials that may be right for you, go to standuptocancer.org/breakthrough. Stand Up to Cancer is a program of the Entertainment Industry Foundation. Please talk to your healthcare provider about appropriate screenings and clinical trials that may be right for you.
Hi, I'm Marcel Spears. Keeping our global neighborhood safe is a tough job.
1 minute.
Made just a bit safer with the help of America's brave military dogs. These dogs, who often take the same risks and make the same sacrifices as our human warriors, keep our troops safe by sniffing out bombs and IEDs, locating enemy positions, and bringing a sense of comfort and home.
Would you put me on mute when Pastor Brooks is speaking? Pastor Brooks, I need you out by about 6:19 or 6:18. Okay, by about 6:19, 6:20 max. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. We have 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
American Humane works to bring home these valiant dogs and reunite them with the people who mean the most to them. Their handlers.
Look at your watch.
So they can enjoy happy,
okay.
healthy,
I'm looking on that.
well-deserved
great.
retirements. To learn how you can help America's four-footed heroes,
10 seconds.
Thank you.
Sure
All right,
thing.
let's have a great show.
Yes, let's have an awesome
You're
show.
listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Thursday, August 24th, 2023. I'm coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. That's it. Everybody, meet us over there. Did you see the Republican debate last night? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about it. And then, of course, Dr. Max Wolf will be on to talk to us about the economy and ownership of the U.S. Treasury and just what's happening with our money. Typically, the money is what drives elections. And quite frankly, quietly, that's what's driving this one. Many Americans, most Americans are hurting financially, struggling. We are struggling. And so it drives a lot of political volatility. And so that is to say, just to throw the bombs out, get somebody in who's going to make things happen. That's why people toggled between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump in 2016. They wanted someone who was going to go to Washington and fight for them. And that it appears that people who do not adhere to orthodoxies, the status quo, they're the ones who have the edge. Vivek Ramaswamy last night, when CNN did an informal poll of some viewers, he got the most votes. He's the one who's willing to step out on that limb. He's also someone who's not 40. So it'll be very interesting. Nikki Haley had a very interesting night as well. Tim Scott, Chris Christie, Ron DeSantis kind of hummed along through. So what do you think? Somebody is going to be the nominee. Somebody's going to be president. Maybe somebody on that stage will be vice president, or at least certainly the nominee for the party for the vice presidency. Indeed, many people felt that this was an undercard debate. That is a fight for second place. What do you think? 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. Let's get to some of these headlines. Donald Trump plans to surrender today in the Georgia election case. The former president is set to turn himself in at the notorious Fulton County Jail. He may pose for a mugshot that could be made public. Watch and see, everybody. We will see what's going to happen. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani surrendered yesterday. He, Trump, and 17 others face charges that they plotted to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia. Republicans largely avoided criticizing former President Trump at the first presidential debate last night. We will be talking about that in just a few minutes. Japan started releasing water from Fukushima's nuclear plant today. People in that part of the world and on the western side of the United States are not too happy about that. This was the worst nuclear disaster in history. And what happened to Mr. Prigozhin? Well, he was in a plane crash yesterday, the head of the Wagner Group, and it was finally confirmed that he was killed in the crash. What do you think about all of that? Some people say it's Putin's revenge. Other people said, we don't know yet. A lot of people wanted him out of here. So we're going to see. But I want to hear your thoughts today. Call me at 773-763-9278. In Chicago, we have an excessive heat warning. It's already warm. It's going to be 97 degrees. That will be the baseline heat. It'll be above 100 when you look at at how it feels. Okay, at 88 degrees in Minneapolis, St. Paul, sunny. Major League Baseball, the Brewers 8, the Twins 7, the White Sox 5, the Mariners 4, and the Cubs 6, and the Tigers 4. In the WNBA, the Aces will be playing the Sky tonight, and the Lynx will be playing the Wings, and those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Hey, Pastor Darius Brooks, Grace Central I love that church. I love you. And I love your first lady and all of you and first baby Dasha, who is a young lady now, excuse me. That's right. That's right. And you and your wife are coming up on your anniversary, yes?
Yes, September 2nd, Santita, 23 years.
Be closing in on that silver. God bless you. It was a beautiful wedding. I was there. My cousin Maria and I were there. My brother Jonathan, now Congressman Jackson, he was in the wedding. It was a beautiful, beautiful wedding. And she is more beautiful today than she was in. And you are more handsome. And your daughter looks like both of you. Looks like both of you. I mean, talk about a perfect combination. She couldn't lose, though, because you're both gorgeous people inside and out. What's the good news today? But first, you are continuing to give people really hundreds of dollars of groceries every week. And people don't have to register. They just need to get on board, get in line, and you can get your food. Talk to me. Talk to me about that. Just what are the dates? What are the times? And what's the process before you get into the good news?
Santita, Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. Every Tuesday from 5 till 7, we serve 8 different townships. And on Wednesdays, we do seniors from noon till 2. It was packed out on Tuesday yesterday. Even though it was hot, they was out here getting food. We give $200 and $300 worth of food, Santita, every week, and it's free. Milk, eggs, cheese, ham, salmon, bit of Jiffy Mix, eggs, produce, sweet navy beans, pinto beans. Produce, everything. So Tuesdays every Tuesday from 5 till 7, and then on Wednesdays from noon till 2 for the seniors. That's Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. Every Tuesday. GraceCentral.net. GraceCentral.net. All right, Santita, I'm excited. You were saying how Deborah and I and Dasha was just beautiful people. You are as well, and we are as well. Habakkuk 3, 6, and 7. Hebrews 3, 6, and 7. Hebrews 3, 6, and 7. But Christ was faithful as a son over his house, whose house we are, if we hold fast our confidence and the boast of our hope firm until the end. Therefore, just as
Dr. Knighton is on
today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as when they provoked me, as in the day of trial in the wilderness. And what God was saying basically in this scripture, he's faithful over what we believe when it comes to dying for us. And he wants us to be faithful in what we believe. Watch this. In context of how he is concerned about us, and he's going to keep his word regardless of what life brings. That's what we just read. It's a two-way street that he really got up with all power in his hand. So it doesn't matter what's going on in our lives. We are principled to know that this is why he's our savior. This is why he's our authority. We should come out on top as well. Santita, if I had to use my thought this morning, loving how his word keeps me grounded to him. Loving how his word keeps me grounded to him. Santita, in times like these, one of the reasons God wants his word in our heart is because this is the only way or the only place where we can be reminded to more sharply focus on why you and I and believers serve him and why we individually trust him leading our individual lives. Collectively, if by chance we get together, but individually, just in case your friends or somebody else don't, I say, oh, Grace Central, love God for yourself. Just in case they decide to go back to crazy, you stay in your walk, stay in your belief, honor what you believe. God should be the conviction we sense in our life, in our failures, and in our victories. You ever had a situation or something, Santita, you felt in your gut feeling leading you to do something or let something go that's not thoughts, whether they're good or bad. It was something in your gut feeling. Say, wait a minute, Santita, I think you and I were talking the other day about something. You said, wait a minute. But where God has you and us and those that are believers and the promises of his word, when it speaks to us based on us having an expected end, and it's of good, not of evil, it just doesn't or won't fit. Anything just can't happen when God gives us a gut feeling. It's not healthy for us. It's not healthy. The Holy Spirit says, Santita, what you doing? Darius, what you doing? Whoever's on my voice, when God is speaking, he's like, what y'all doing? I told Grace Central on last Sunday, God don't just show us good stuff. God show us the crazy stuff we doing too that's going to put us in harm's way, and did not stop to utilize God's word for our GPS. And the outcome of that thing made you say, man, I wish I'd have done that differently. Santita, every day, you should have some personal God time. People, if he's our authority, every day we should put aside some meditation time to see what God's word is saying about what he's doing. I often tell Great Central, don't pay attention to what God is doing. Just do what he told you to do. You know how often I say God permits what he hates to create what he loves. Let me present to you another way that you might want to always stay connected to God. God often allows some shaking up in our lives to cursing things for purpose, that he will not let anything keep us from being his fully. I was reading in Deuteronomy what Moses was teaching the Israelites to let go, circumcise their hearts. When God is in our hearts, we can't lose. When you love God for real, not because of, but in spite of, as I close, God's word agitates or communicates the same exact message to you over and over again. Santita, I got you. Darius, I got you. And it will cause his word to loudly ring true to what he's telling you, so we can stand on his word.
Amen. 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 What's the address of your church once again, so that people can get out there and get that food, but the spiritual food too, because they worship on Sundays? Pastor Brooks.
Yes, there is. Yes, sir. It's Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. Tuesdays from 5 till 7 and Wednesdays from noon till 2. Every Tuesday.
All right, all right. Love you, Pastor Darius Brooks. Love you, love you, love you. We've got Dr. Shanita Knightman. She's your favorite. You're her favorite. She's our favorite. Registered nurse and infection preventionist. So glad you are with us today. Whew. What is the good news? I'm sitting up here in this excessive heat. I can feel it already.
I'm sure. And it's crazy, Santita, because it's good news. So it's interesting because I guess it's news would be that. And the news is honestly the fact that there is prevention, And so right now, I know we've said this time and time again that COVID-19, other illnesses has been, I would say, dwindled or ignored because of everything that's going on right now in this political landscape, meaning that there's been so much attention to what's been going on with Trump and everything else, that essentially infection prevention and control, COVID's presence, the fact that it was spreading like wildfire, the fact that CDC quietly stopped tracking cases, yet and still, it's still continuing to be an issue. And so as people start to go back and dwell indoors, we are going to see an uptick of cases. I continue to express to people like, hey, you just don't want it, and if you have had it, then there's still that emphasis on making sure you have a primary care provider, just because you don't understand what those consequences are going to be. Even just yesterday within my city, because I know we continue to talk about, flooding. We keep talking about, weather issues that are happening and their impact that it may have, not just on our health, but we also have to think about what are these storms and these disasters getting ready to do to our healthcare system when people need services, emergency services. And so it's just that reminder to individuals that whether you believe in COVID or not, whether, because I've seen a whole thing come out about people think that we're going back into lockdown. So regardless of how you feel about anything being political, anything being about control or whatever the case may be, I'm still going to continue to emphasize the importance of taking care of your health, because at the end of the day, accidents do happen. Chronic conditions are real. And if you need the healthcare system but cannot rely on it because we have so many beds that are occupied, with COVID patients, RSV patients, or patients with other conditions, that means that your care may not necessarily be met. So I'm emphasizing to individuals that that is something that we can all agree upon, and that is health and prevention. And that's us practicing prevention in our own way and understanding that it's something that we must be vigilant about. It's something that we must incorporate into our daily lives because, again, just as we mentioned, illnesses are not going away. Whether we debate on how they get here or not, the bottom line is that they're here. And because we understand that they're here, we need to be figuring out how do we prevent them, how do we stay safe from them in a manner to where it's not going to compromise our health or compromise others. I'm still going to emphasize, first and foremost, if you do nothing else, remember that cleaning your hands can save your life. It is the single most important way to prevent the spread of transmission, and not just cleaning your hands, but making sure that you clean your hands correctly. Please remember that literally prior to the pandemic, only 5%, less than 5% of individuals cleaned their hands correctly. And because of that, remember, if you don't clean them correctly, then it didn't happen at all because you still run the risk of contaminating yourself.
That is a whole lot to take in. I mean, but it's the protocols that we observed were really lessons that were being taught to us. Let me ask you this, because I've been doing a lot of reading and I've been trying to find out, we don't talk about the flu anymore. And in fact, the presumption when you go to the doctor is that you have COVID, not the flu. It seems like they're conflating the two. Is the COVID the flu? Is there a difference? Why it doesn't seem like that's being observed?
It's a lot of interesting things that are happening right now, Santita, especially as it relates to COVID or the flu. And I'm specifically saying that from the standpoint that, there's things coming out such as floosters, right? Which is intended to cover both the flu and be the booster for COVID. You have tests, which is that flu C2 that I was talking about a couple years ago, where you can go and get that one swab and it's going to assess you for flu and COVID at the same time. I think the most important thing is to remember that these two illnesses are not the same. A COVID vaccine is not going to stop you from getting the flu, and the flu vaccine is not going to stop you from getting COVID. So it's important that those two are separated and that people know that they are two separate illnesses. The same way with RSV, the same thing with pneumonia. The problem is, though, is that if you get a cocktail of these illnesses because your body is compromised, meaning that, for example, let's say you get COVID, but you come into somebody that's, let's say, sick, and they just so happen to have the flu. Just because you have COVID doesn't mean that you won't get the flu. It actually may make your conditions worse. So that is an important thing to know, that when we are talking about these illnesses, what should we be thinking about when we say, hey, how do I prevent from getting ill? And I'm just going to emphasize that just because you get one doesn't mean that you can't get the other. So even if you are ill and you're saying, oh, well, forget it, I'm ill already, it won't matter. You don't want to make situations worse. A lot of the individuals that when they were on the case sheet for looking at COVID deaths, a lot of the people had something compounded. So they had flu. They might have had pneumonia. They had other illnesses. It wasn't just COVID that killed them. They had some other illness that had a complication that was the reason for the death.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's the rub for me, that we're only talking about COVID, and you've got all of these other infections that are out here, and you might not have COVID, you might have the flu. You might not have COVID, you might have pneumonia. What can we do? Just very quickly, I've got less than a minute here. What can we do to continue to boost our immune system? I mean, just every day, like ginger. I mean, just help.
Yes, nutrient dense foods. Absolutely, ginger is an anti-inflammatory. Making sure that you're getting some of some zinc filled foods, things that are filled with vitamin C, such as your citrus fruit. So really making sure that your body stays in prime condition, and that you are staying away from refined sugars. Remember, for every 75 grams of sugar that your body contains, that means that your body now, your immune system is lower for 5 hours. And so if you keep compounding that with more sugar, just understand you're not putting your body in an optimal position.
Hey, Dr. Nina, that is her handle on social media. HEYDRNINA. HEYDRNINA. Hey, Dr. Nina, follow her. She's got the best common sense, practical, information laden advice that exists. We just love you so much, and thank God for you. Let's talk about this debate, everybody. What did you think about it? Did you watch it? I hope you did, because I watched it, and you know what? I'm glad that I did. It was very interesting. You can't mount the counter argument if you don't know what the baseline argument is. You need to know where Chris Christie is coming from. You need to know where the governor of Arkansas is coming from. You need to know where the former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, is coming from. You need to understand Vivek Ramaswamy. You need to know who this young comer is who kept mentioning Dr. Knight in the south side of Chicago. He's going into neighborhoods that Republicans have been avoiding for generations. But he's also going into neighborhoods that the Democrats have been taking for granted. Don't sleep on any of this. Don't sleep on any of it. Call us at 773-763-9278. Walter, I wish you'd call in, because you sure do have a very interesting take on all of this. On what's happening tonight, we hear. This is when former President Trump will surrender at the Fulton County Jail, the notorious Fulton County Jail, where a man was killed. He was eaten to death by bedbugs. Can't make this stuff up. Maybe he'll get a mugshot. Maybe he'll have to take off all of his clothes and be patted down. That's the process. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Dr. Knighton?
She hung up.
Oh, okay. Oh, oh, boy. Thank you so much. Oh, boy. Okay, so we're going to get everybody on. Okay, it is good to see everybody today. Whew.
When it comes to giving your bathroom a fresh spin.
Okay, just let me know. Who do I have on thus far?
Attorney Patello's on.
Attorney Patello, how you doing, hon?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, great. It was a very interesting debate last night. Did you not think so?
I stayed up for the whole thing, even though I knew I had to be up early this morning, and it was entertaining and something else.
Yeah, I thought it was. I really, really did. I thought it was really, really interesting. And watching Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy and Chris Christie and Tim Scott, all of them, it was entertaining. They called it the up card debate.
Yeah, it was interesting because the two winners of the debate were the two people who weren't there, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, because everyone else seemed to be an unhinged psycho.
Dr. Gibbs is on.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they were unhinged psychos. I think they were a little eager.
Yeah, okay, that's one way to put it. They very much, they seemed that they were throwing elbows at everyone in every direction, kind of flailing to try to get attention.
Well, and they're not used to this this stage. I can say this. I know when Reverend ran the first time, he was only 41, 42, but he had been in public life 20 years. And he'd been trained by the best, And he also was getting advice from the best and not just from political hacks. They came later.
Yeah.
But by that time, it was like, no, he's already set in stone. Wow, I can't believe he knows how to do this. All of this. And thank God for that, because it's a lot.
And also the
Reverend Yuri's on.
do anyone any favors by just having everyone talk over each other.
What you say, hon?
After the moderators can do anyone any favors by just letting them talk over each other all the time.
They didn't. I was like, just stop interrupting
30
everybody.
seconds.
It was, okay. Well, who do I have?
Everyone is on except for the senator. She didn't answer, but I'll call her back.
Okay, no worries. So we have Dr. Gibbs, Dr. Yuri, and Attorney Patillo.
That's correct.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
10 seconds.
All right. Let's have a great one, everybody.
Stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk about this debate last night. It's kicking off the 2024 season. I sure hope that the Democrats will pull it together and will debate themselves, because I would love to see Marianne Williamson and Robert Kennedy. I'd love to see Joe Biden. I'd love to see them present their ideas. I want to see a platform on which I can see and hear Cornel West respond to questions about policy. Really, instead of all of this speculating around them. That having been said, it's not a theory to have a debate on the Republican side. Last night, although the front runner, former President Trump, did not participate, he has other matters to which he must attend. He is going to be surrendering himself to the Fulton County Jail tonight. And we will be talking about that tomorrow and what the optics of that will be. Will they release the mugshot that they said that they're going to take? Will they make him strip, take off his clothes, as you have to do when you're processed? All of that was looming in the background. But in the meantime, you had quite the array of persons on the stage. And so, who jumped out to you? Was it Vivek Ramaswamy, a man who's worth a considerable amount of money, one of these tech moguls, a businessman first, like Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, former governor of South Carolina. What did she sure was? She came ready for the fight. And Vivek Ramaswamy was ready for the fight too. He knew he was going to take on incoming fire, and he took it. Tim Scott, what did you think about that? Ron DeSantis? Let's just go, Chris Christie. Let's talk about it all. I want to hear what your thoughts are. Before you can make a counter argument, you need to know what the baseline argument is, everybody. So I urge you to look and listen and watch these debates critically. I don't care if they are Democratic, Republican, or Independent. You need to know what's out here, and you need to know what's being discussed, what's being avoided, what's making it onto what's making it as policy. What is it? You need to know. So we've got Reverend Dr. Todd Yuri, Esquire, Rainbow Push, senior pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church out of Baltimore. We've got attorney Robert Patillo from Atlanta, Georgia, WAOK, Rainbow Push. And of course, we've got Dr. David Gibbs, brilliant historian out of Arizona. Of course, University of Arizona. Let me start with you, Dr. Gibbs. What did you see last night?
Well, I didn't have a chance to see the whole debate. I saw a few clips, and clearly the person who stood out the most, BBC pronounced him the winner of the debate, was Vivek Ramaswamy. He's starting to look like the most likely alternative to Donald Trump, at least at the moment. Let me say, I think that Ramaswamy, if he were to be president, would be very bad for ordinary people. He seems to have a libertarian background, as far as I can tell. He's worth over $600 million, and you don't make that much money at 38 by being a very nice person, normally. And so I don't in any way look forward to the prospect of a Ramaswamy presidency. That much said, a number of things you can tell about Ramaswamy. One is he's very smart. He just by listening to him talk, he talks like somebody who has a very high, a very good mind. That's not necessarily a good thing because history is littered with talented people who use their talents to make the world a worse place. But he somehow combines a kind of highly articulate, quick on his feet style with a certain ability to relate to people. He can certainly appear as if he relates to ordinary people. He seems trustworthy. I don't think any of that is real, but nevertheless, faking it is a very important talent in politics, and I think he has that talent. He seems to have not only he seems to have also a certain, shall we say, a nose for politics. He seems to know what the public wants. That's a very important talent as well. So what I'm seeing in Ramaswamy, and I think that the clips I saw seem to verify it, is somebody who could be a very formidable candidate and would be very formidable against Joe Biden if he were to be the Republican nominee. If Trump falters, if something happens that Trump leaves the race, I would see Ramaswamy as the most likely person to be the Republican nominee.
I agree. He knew he was going to take incoming fire, and he was ready for it. And he's a product of his generation also. It's a much more integrated, if you will, Dr. Gibbs and our Reverend Dr. Uri and Attorney Patillo. My parents grew up with race music. I didn't grow up with that, and he absolutely did not. I mean, he was someone who was throwing out several times. He talked about going to the south side of Chicago. I said, oh, okay, he knows what he's doing. He borrowed from Obama. Skinny guy, funny name, got it, check. And of course, you typically don't make hundreds of millions of dollars being a nice guy. That doesn't matter. People are not thinking about that. That's an aspirational need that Americans have, that I too can become one of the super wealthy. I too can become an oligarch. Unfortunately, that's just where it is. Not that I could end poverty, but that I could, maybe sit atop someone so I don't have to be at the bottom. I don't know what it is. Attorney Robert Patillo, what did you see last night?
Well, no, I found it to be an interesting debate between kind of the conservative media sphere and then the more pragmatic politicians who are used to getting things done. So if you look at a Nikki Haley, if you look at a Mike Pence, if you look at a Chris Christie, they talk about their governing experience. Ron DeSantis to an extent, about having to work across party lines, about political reality, about what you can get past. I think Nikki Haley in particular on the abortion and life issue talks about the need to have 60 senators, and we can talk about whatever we want, but we can't work across party lines to get things done. All of this is dead. And it seems that the Republican base does not like reality. They did not want to hear about Chris Christie working a bipartisan method in New Jersey in order to get things done. They do not want to hear about things that were actually realistic. They wanted to hear much of this aspirational kind of conservative talk media talking points. And we saw that in terms of the polling about Vivek Ramaswamy. So Vivek, I've actually met him a few times. If you watch the old Foxes, the night clip with Shannon Green, I will be on for the last segment of Night Quarter. Then Vivek will be on for the segment right before mine, talking about the war on woke. So I've spoken to him in the green room and asked him a few times to listen to him. And he doesn't believe any of the stuff he's saying. You know, he's a tech pro. He's a salesman by nature. He's a marketer. And I've heard him on the phone talking about how dumb the conservative base is. They'll believe anything that you tell them. And I think that he has taken that and harnessed that into almost a Borat-like character that these people are willing to buy and listen to. And I think it's a very dangerous place for the DLP when you can literally just say anything and they will believe it.
You know what? Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to know what your thoughts are about the debate. Arlene says Trump did not attend because he's the front runner by far, at least, and he certainly has something else to do today, Arlene. And Robert says that the debate was entertaining. You said that too, Robert. And so I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Arlene continues, Biden, like every incumbent in modern history, will not participate in primary debates, and he should not. I disagree with that, Arlene, because he has competition. This is when you need to air out the ideas. I don't think that we should not have an imperial presidency, where you presume that just because someone is just because we're in the primary season, that the president will become the president. Remember LBJ. LBJ said that he would not seek and he would not accept the nomination just 3 or 4 days before Dr. King was killed. It threw the whole race into chaos, even though he was really having a hard time. And so that really helped to push Robert Kennedy, jettison him to the front, and then he was killed. So you never know how these things will pan out. You know where you've been, my pastor's wife, Mrs. Luther May Evans, used to say, but you don't know where you're going. So just really be careful every step along the way. Reverend Dr. Urey, your thoughts about the debate?
I can hear, good morning, Santita. I can hear the announcement over the school intercom asking all of the school deans to come quickly because there's a food fight in the cafeteria and the kids are acting out. It really was a fight for attention. It was less about substance. It was more about command. And a lot of this time spent trying to argue in this exchange of a few minutes back and forth of whether or not Mike Pence had done the right thing in protecting the Constitution was really a sign that though Trump was not there, Trump was there. The shadow of Donald Trump was in the room and it could not be avoided. And so the truth of the matter last night, as far as I saw it, was who was going to get close enough to be like Trump, but still leave room to be able to criticize Trump when Trump finally does get on the stage, because there is kind of this competition for who is going to be the lesser of or the greater of a less than optimal alternative. And so when we start looking at the polls today and start looking at who folks think actually made some impressions on the base, let's not lose sight that debates in the primaries are about how you're going to motivate the base, who's going to get the nomination. And so looking for a centrist in the primary season is like trying to figure out how you're going to get your spouse's family to like you even before you've gotten a proposal. It makes no sense. And so if we're not going to pay attention to what the issue was, I think it was masterful to see how the former president, I believe he had some hand in the orchestration. You have Rudy Giuliani sucking all of the pre-show air out of the room in Georgia. Then you have the shroud over the debate. And then you have now all day, it's going to be number 45 watch all day again today until tonight. And so really, as the day goes on, it'll be interesting to see amongst the base how much traction is actually gained by any of the candidates on stage last night, sufficient to say they really have a shot. In the meantime, the food fight was entertaining, a little bit messy, a little bit clumsy in terms of how it was moderated and how it was administrated. But at the end of the day, Vivek did pretty good to kind of draw the command from everyone else. There were a whole lot of spectators just kind of watching. Asa Hutchinson should probably close up shop, because if he's not going to be able to kind of get in the middle of the tussle and create a space for himself, the rest of them are just going to run over him. And he looked like the teachers who are all kind of shocked that there's a food fight going on in the cafeteria and they just don't know what to do.
Oh, call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. But that's why I really try to look at all of these things, Attorney Patillo, because I had the feeling that Mr. Ramaswamy, that he's like Trump, quite frankly. These are business people, and they do business. That's it. I mean, and they're agnostic about everything but the money, really. And so what you do is he is saying things that he knows can catch. I mean, the fact is, he knows, as someone who is a person of color, he knows how conservative people of color are, Attorney Patillo. So he's kind of walking down that social line, while he's also doing outreach. If you heard several times, he mentioned the South Side of Chicago. I said, okay, there's something. He is up to something here. He's up to something here. And I wonder what it is. You've met him several times. Do you think that it would be worth it to talk to him to see what his position is? I mean, for example, the study that just came out from the Institute for Policy Studies, it shows it'll be 513 years before Black people reach economic equality. Should we have that discussion with him and with any of these other candidates about what the plan is to close that gap?
Yeah, I think we should have the discussion with everybody, quite frankly, because even if Vivek doesn't believe anything that he's saying, that doesn't mean that he can't come out with some better policies. You know, he was very much a progressive voice in the GLP for a while, and then he got into the race. He started talking about Juneteenth needs to be abolished and all this, that, and the other, because that's what the conservative base indicated, and what polling indicated was the position that would get him traction, and it has been effective. Donald Trump and Vivek have the benefit of being untethered to reality. That sounds like a slight, but it's not. Because reality oftentimes can be a prison. You saw that with Nikki Haley. You saw that with Chris Christie, where they're talking about the things that can't happen, where they're talking about the things that aren't politically feasible, and that's not what voters get enthusiasm from. What Trump were able to do is harness this idea of infinite possibilities, untethered from the realities of politics, and that's very appealing. And I think that Black folks do need to have a conversation with them to find out, well, what are some of your positions that may exist? Now, do I think anybody on that stage will ever be president? No, I do not. I think that President Trump, as Reverend Urey said, is watching this laughing because it's basically showing the rest of the Republican base that he is the only show in town. And if for any reason he cannot run for president, he will pass the mantle off to Don Jr. To pick it up and run for him. He's not going to pick any of these individuals to be his heir apparent in the party, because he's seen what happened when he trusted Mike Pence to carry out what he thought needed to be done, and he couldn't trust him. This will be either Donald Trump or Don Jr. as the nominee for the Republican Party. But this does very much show kind of the chaos of the party, for the leadership that says, well, we need to move on past Trump. Well, move on to what? Move on to the party of Ramaswamy? Move on to the party of DeSantis? Move on to the party of Asa Hutchinson? It really does show that the Republican Party is in flux right now. And without, as much as you may dislike the Don at the top, it's a far more cohesive and electable party under Donald Trump than is under any of these other candidates.
What about what Arlene Williams says, Dr. Gibbs? She said Biden, like every other incumbent in modern history, will not participate in primary debates, and he should not. What do you think?
Well, in some ways, you could say what he's doing, what Biden is doing, is parallel to what Trump is doing. Because, the front runner in his party, he doesn't need to debate. He doesn't need to condescend to debate. In Biden's case, I think it's not a good look, because the impression everyone has is he's not mentally up to debating, that he is suffering from cognitive decline. Recently he was in Maui to deal with the catastrophe in Maui, and during a ceremony, there's a clip of this that showed him nodding off during the ceremony. we've seen things like this multiple times since even before he was elected. And so the perception will be, in the case of Biden, that he's not debating because he's not up to the job. And again, that's not a good look. If Robert Kennedy continues to get large crowds, just the other day in The Guardian, there's an article about how Robert Kennedy is drawing large crowds at events, and the Democrats are getting very nervous about that. If that continues and Biden continues to ignore him and pretend that Robert Kennedy doesn't exist, it'll only increase doubts about Biden's viability as a president. And so I think Biden Biden is in a very awkward position. But from the standpoint of the Democrats, there's no good answer to it because they're stuck with Biden. Biden has the advantage of being an incumbent. That's worth a few percentage points in the general election. And nobody will have that advantage, including Kamala Harris. I think they're stuck with him, but he is a very weak candidate. And whether he's electable or not is an open question.
What do you think? Robert Williams says that Swami is very high energy. Linear Bob said Nikki Haley stood out. So as a Republican, she sounds too much like the grown up in the rooms. And she's probably not going anywhere on a Republican ticket at this time. Everybody has some thoughts about this. Reverend Dr. Yeary, what do you see? I mean, because you've got what we saw last night. You've got what we will probably see tonight, and the mug shots in the morning. That's going to be the talk of the town. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, here's what I will say. First,
Stop laughing.
Out loud.
Stop laughing. Stop it.
No, I got to tell you why. Because I just figured I probably need to double down on my popcorn, because when Robert Patillo said that the nomination's either going to go to the former president or Don Jr., I was like, I almost let an expletive out loud. I'm like, wait a minute, I never really thought of that. It was kind of,
why not? They did it with Bush.
Yeah.
They did it with the Bushes.
So.
Right.
But here's they did.
And the Kennedys.
Yeah.
By the time though, and here's the interesting, Don Jr. really, other than spending time with his dad all the time, walking around in the shadow, really does not have, as you mentioned, the Kennedys and the Bushes. There have been some attempt to kind of get in the political game and demonstrate you had some political chops. By the time you started seeing RFK get in after he had been Attorney General, you'd seen WB, Governor of Texas. So it's a little different, but it's an interesting proposal. Here's kind of what I saw. It was last night a competition for, let's pretend that we have really, really bad luck in the Republican Party and Donald Trump cannot run. It is the nightmare scenario that fits to some degree the Asa Hutchinson side of the base, because they're trying to get rid of the guy. But it freaks out everybody else in the base because they've never seen this much energy inside the Republican Party in probably a generation. And so now the Republican Party is trying to figure out how do they keep the momentum of a Donald Trump presence and potential presidency over and against the reality that there are formidable headwinds. We just got to see how they play out. As to the Joe Biden side of it, I think the reason Biden is catching so much heat and may lead to debate is because the Biden administration has done such a horrible job of messaging about their policy wins and the impact that it will make. Policy implementation has to play catch up to the reality of the people. And so folks are wondering, what's the big deal about infrastructure and the rest of it? If we don't do a better job of messaging, I think you will see Joe Biden have to debate. And if that's the case and folks start trying to figure out Trump, Biden too, well, this ain't a boxing match, it's politics. It ain't going to go well for who is the heavyweight champion of the political world.
Well, I tell you what, I want to know what your thoughts are. 773-763-9278. I think it's going to be very interesting, because even with Joe Biden's tremendous accomplishments, and you cannot take that from him as we go into 2024, he's still tremendously unpopular. And that's not my fault, so don't strike out at me. Their messaging is off. They could have done an executive order justice and policing. They could have done an executive order on voting rights. I mean, there's some things with the optics they could have done. It would have only lasted for the totality of his presidency, but it would have helped. That having been said, he's accomplished a lot. But he is also physically struggling, which is hard to see. It's hard to see someone who has had physical challenges in his life that he's overcome. It's hard to see him struggling right now, but he is doing that. And remember, this is a personality contest. This is a contest. Dr. Gibbs and Reverend Dr. Yuri and Attorney Patel, this is about optics as much as it is anything else. You don't want, that is why at FDR, you did not have pictures of him in a wheelchair. Oh, no, not until he was about to die. Because he knew optically what Americans needed, particularly when you were in a depression. So his son stood beside him and held him up. Think about that. You got a lot to talk about. And then you've got a Republican presumptive nominee who is standing up to the system. Oh, yeah, that's how this stuff is playing out. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278, and let's talk with this brilliant panel about this. And you, meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. WCPT 820 and AM 950 Radio, the Santita Jackson Show. You guys, you know, we're still on Facebook and YouTube and blah, 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 blah. So, well, I thought the debate was very interesting, Dr. Gibbs. That's why pardon me for calling you so late. I'm still trying to get my health back in order. So I fall asleep at the most inopportune times. I mean, I fall into a hard sleep and then I wake up and I have to push myself to get up just to make sure that I have my show together. But so where do you see this going? I mean, because really there is, Look, I really am not disappointed. I'm really bothered by how the Democrats have treated Robert Kennedy. The fact that they've denied that the Biden administration has denied him Secret Service protection, given his family's history, I think it's an abomination. I remember being backstage at the Washington Convention Center as we were not frantically, but, hurriedly getting ready to get on the stage when my father was about to announce on November 3rd, 1983, his first presidential run. Up to that point, he was the most threatened candidate in history. And the fear was that he was not going to live. And so you would see people outside of campaign events crying and praying for him. I mean, it was a lot in 84 and 88. And I remember the negotiation that my father's attorney, his lead attorney, Attorney John Bustamante, who was a classmate of Dr. King's, by the way, that they were having with the Reagan White House, because they were earnestly working out getting the Secret Service protection ASAP, even though we had the Fruit of Islam, and you had the National Organization of Black Law Executives who had organized Black police officers and blacks in the law enforcement space. They were protecting him all over the country. And they formalized it because everywhere we went, there were just several layers of protection. But for them to deny him, and by the end of the day, they had worked it out with the Reagan administration. They were like, well, no, your Secret Service protection, because it's not the easiest thing. I mean, you have to go in someone's house, wire it up. There's all this stuff that has to happen. And you have to sign off on it, quite frankly. You sign your life away, pretty much. But that's what we had to do. For them not to provide him with Secret Service protection, Dr. Gibbs and Attorney Patillo and Reverend Dr. Yuri, I just think it's shameful. It's awful. They can't justify this to me. They can't. I hope he stays healthy. I tell you that. I mean, Dr. Gibbs, what do you make of them not giving him Secret Service protection? What is that?
Mr. McKee's on.
Well, it's clearly a political move to insist he's not a real candidate, not really there. The idea is if you ignore him, maybe he'll go away. That's the Democrat strategy. I think one of the things that they miss is that there's a great satisfaction in the public, including among Democrats, with the current state of affairs. Not just with Biden personally, but also it really is, for whatever reason, a dissatisfaction with the economic circumstances And whether that's due to the fact that the economic circumstances are just objectively not, or the fact that the perception, the optics is important, and the public is not happy. They're not happy with the course of the Ukraine war. And so Robert Kennedy is putting into that. And they're very afraid of what he represents. And unfortunately, what they're doing is a little bit cynical, because as you noted, there really is a danger here. And we all know about the Kennedy family's history. You've noted yourself that you have some experience, some personal experience with the nature of the danger we're talking about. So yes, in my view, it is unconscionable that they're not providing him Secret Service protection. This is a political move, and they're willing to accept the risk that comes with the political move.
I think what they're doing is horrific. I really do. I think it's horrific. It is.
I agree.
You said it's involving someone's life, and quite frankly, I feel that way about someone on the right. I don't play with people's families. I don't play with people's lives. I don't believe in it. I don't. I do not. And I just remember Dwight McKee, you're there?
I'm here.
And I remember it was and Reverend Dr. Yuri, Attorney Patillo, were you still there? Well, I remember in the run up to the 84 campaign in 1983, Jerry Falwell, I think I shared this with you before, told Pastor E.V. Hill, who was one of the biggest Black evangelists in that big white Christian space, but he was also huge in the Black space as well. But Pastor Hill
Attorney
said,
Patillo's back on.
Okay, he said to my father, Jerry Falwell wants to see you. And my father knew all these people. They're preachers. They all know each other, particularly preachers of a certain stature. They all know each other. And he said, Jesse, you're my Christian brother. You and I don't agree on much politically. I think we can agree. But I'm down here in Lynchburg, and just in where I travel, I'm hearing a lot of things that disturb me. And I want you to know that I'm going to do whatever I can to save you, to be helpful. And I will never say anything from my pulpit that will stir up trouble and get you hurt. I just want you to know that. It meant so much. I mean, really, you all? Seriously? I've heard people say the most vile things about the candidates that they don't like.
1 minute.
I mean, aren't you tired? Don't you just want some solutions? Don't you just want to be able to go to the emergency room? Don't you just want to stay out of bankruptcy? Don't you want to just have a job that's going to give you a progressive wage that is going to get you out of the hole? Don't you want to be able to afford $2,000 a month in rent? That's the median rent in the United States today. You don't have to play these games with people, and you're not going to win letting this threat of death hang over this
30 seconds.
Shameful. It's just shameful. It's shameful. And yeah, I take it personally. I sure do. And you should too, because it could be you. Oh, stand by, everybody. Let's get right to it. Robert, are you there?
10 seconds.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody's there so I can get right to you. Okay, we just added Dwight McKee, yes?
Progressive talk.
Stand by.
Okay, hon. Okay,
Dwight
thank you.
McKee's on.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody, let's talk about this Republican debate and the imminent arrest or surrender to arrest of Donald Trump tonight. Call me at 773-763-9278. Call me this wonderful panel. Of course, Dr. David Gibbs from the University of Arizona, Dwight McKee, Dr. D, brilliant dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project, and Reverend Dr. Todd Yuri, Rainbow Push, and the senior pastor of the iconic Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore, and WAOK's host. They have him doing mornings. And of course, his regular show is on Sundays, but I'm so glad that he's getting more of an opportunity to host it. More and more people need to hear the brilliant Robert Patillo, attorney Robert Patillo from Rainbow Push, WAOK every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time, 12 to 3 Central Standard Time. Call us at 773-763-9278, WCPT 820. The nation's largest progressive talk radio station is my home station, AM 950 Radio, my home station to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody's having quite the conversation over there. So let's get to some of these headlines. We can get back to the rest of the show. Yevgeny Prigozhin was listed as a passenger in a plane crash that killed 10, including him. It's a private jet that crashed northwest of Moscow yesterday. Donald Trump plans to surrender today in the Georgia election case. He will be surrendering to the notorious Atlanta and Fulton County Jail. He may pose for a mugshot. And if he's processed, he'll have to take off his clothes and on and on and on. We will see how that goes. We'll see exactly how it goes. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Republicans largely avoided criticizing former President Trump, the front runner at the first presidential debate. We'll be talking about that shortly. Japan started releasing water from Fukushima's nuclear plant yesterday. As you recall, this was the worst nuclear accident in history, everybody. For years, tanks have been storing contaminated water from the site of one of the world's worst nuclear disasters. It wasn't one of the world's worst nuclear disasters. It was the worst. Remember, it came just behind a massive earthquake. The water will be filtered and diluted. Do you want it? Because, we share the Pacific. That is, Japan and China and the United States share the Pacific Ocean. Think about that, everybody. In Chicago, we'll have a high of 97 degrees. There's an excessive heat warning. Please, everybody, drink a lot of water and check on your neighbors. I don't care what their ages are, and get people to cooling stations, because sometimes you're dehydrated. Oftentimes you are, and you don't even know it. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, it will be sunny today at 88 degrees in Major League Baseball. Yesterday, the Brewers 8, the Twins 7, the White Sox 5, the Mariners 4. The Cubs 6, the Tigers 4. In the WNBA, we're going to fight the day. The Aces will be playing the Sky, and the Lynx will be facing off against the Wings. Everybody, we've been talking about financial freedom here on the Santita Jackson Show. And so I want you to reach out to Team Hochberg. They have a credit card that you can use now, and it will help you to build your credit, to go from 500, being in the 500 range, to going to being in the 600 range, to being in the 700 range. And it can happen to you within a year. If you follow those rules, call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. And you can also buy a home. If you've not owned a home in the past 3 years, guess what? There is a program that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac want to provide to you that can help to turn those numbers around. If you've not owned a home within the past 3 years, and if your total income, if you live in Chicago and your total household income is below $105,700, and that could be several of you on that, just who comprise your household income, you might be eligible for this program, but you won't know unless you give them a call at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. If you're interested in being a homeowner, and please think about it, everybody, because you can create multi-generational wealth for yourself, starting with yourself, going to your children and their children. Homeowners beget another generation of homeowners, and on it goes. Please call them at 855-56-DAVID or And so how do you get good credit? You got to get a credit card, not the debit card, the credit card. And so they have worked out, the Team Hochberg has worked it out so that you can have a credit card that can build your credit, that can take you from the 500s to the 600s to the 700s in about a year or so. So call them and find out about their financial products. Find out about how you can stop going into foreclosure. Find out about how you can save your home or get one. 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or 56david.com. This debate last night was a whole lot. We've got Dr. David Gibbs from the University of Arizona, brilliant historian, Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, Esquire, Rainbow Push, senior pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church. We've got, of course, Dr. D, brilliant social scientist. Can't wait to hear from you. Oh, boy. And attorney Robert Patillo. Robert Patillo, why don't you, in a nutshell, what did we see last night in this debate?
I think what we saw is why Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party. You saw a lot of not ready for primetime candidates presenting themselves to the American people. And I think that what got lost in kind of the squabbling nature of the debate was some of the policy positions that are being laid out. About having a national 6-week abortion ban versus a 15-week abortion ban. And the only woman on the stage had to remind the GOP why that's an unpopular position. When they discussed the
Wait a minute, and it's like they were not listening to her. It's like,
oh, of course not. No, a woman don't know anything about a woman's body. Listen to me, old white man. Or even the conversation about climate change, where they say, well, there's a wildfire in Maui. A hurricane just hit California. Canada's on fire. It's 130 degrees across the country. And the response was, there's a hoax. Literally, someone said it is a hoax. And we need to be burning more fossil fuel. When we talked about the military expenditures and spending, when we peel past that initial layer of just kind of the showmanship and ridiculousness of it and get down to the policies, you realize that Donald Trump is the most moderate candidate of all of them, and perhaps also the most pragmatic politician of all of them. And it becomes even more clear how he was able to take over the Republican Party, and also why the Republican Party is not able to quit him. That despite the 91 indictments, the 1,000 years he's facing in prison, he is still the best option for the GOP.
wow. Dwight McKee, did you see the debate? What did you think about it? You said to watch out for Ramaswamy. You said to watch out for him. Did you see how many times he mentioned South Side of Chicago?
Yeah, I told you he was going to be a factor. He was going to be an issue. I think you have to understand, at least what I was saying, and to some extent I agree with Robert to some extent, is that I think they had different agendas. I think Christie was running against Trump. I think Pence was running against Biden. But I think that everybody else is running against Harris. I think the other candidates were really running to be the vice president, not the president. And they were trying to make sure that they were properly postured to demonstrate to Trump that they can be an asset rather than a liability. And that they see themselves being judged by Harris as vice presidential candidates and what they will bring to the table for Trump to balance her out, her influence out. I think that she is probably a liability on the Democratic side because people are worried about Biden's health, and they really do think that she may be the heir apparent to Biden. And so they want to make sure that people understand, and it's very coherent about the fact that she's one heartbeat away from the presidency, and that they really want to make sure that people understand that enough that they see themselves and Trump as a legitimate alternative
Now, Arlene,
to that.
well, you know, Arlene says that Vivek is smart for sure, but he's a slimy car salesman like figure. What do you think?
She said, who's smart?
She said that Vivek Ramaswamy is smart, but he is
Oh,
slimy.
not just smart. He's not just smart. He's dangerous.
How so?
Because he is the things to me, and I think Dr. Gibbs said that the less ethical of all of the candidates, and the more inclined to push these buttons. I'm with Rob, but I don't think he believes 90% of what he says. It's for him as he's just being practical enough to position himself to get some traction, and that he is really very unethical and has very little parameters in what he's willing to do to be the president. And if you listen to his policy issues, they were very, very, very dangerous, very extreme. And they made Donald Trump look like a moderate. I think he is the most dangerous, and because he is the most unethical, but he's also the most charismatic guy who was on that stage. So I would be very, very worried of him.
Dr. Gibbs, it seems like you have some company in your thoughts.
Those are pretty much my views on it. I suppose the only thing I would add to what Dwight McGee said is that one of the talents in politics to be able to fake it and to be credible in faking it. I think Ramaswamy has that talent. Some people have it, some don't. Bill Clinton clearly had the ability to fake it, to pretend to be empathetic with ordinary people. Hillary Clinton clearly did not have that talent. She was not very effective at that. Ramaswamy is very effective in pretending to connect with ordinary people, pretending to be candid and honest and all that kind of thing. He comes across as superficially credible in that respect, in a way that I think will serve him well in terms of the electoral process, despite his inexperience. He's able to somehow combine a very articulate style that projects intelligence without the appearance of condescension. And that's a very difficult thing to do for a politician, but I think he knows how to pull it off. And yes, I think behind that is, I think, somebody who is worth $600 million and his real heart is with money. I think that's what he's about. And I think he'd be a very bad president, probably much more dangerous than Trump, because I think he'd be much more effective than Trump. But nevertheless, I do think he's a very credible candidate should Trump falter. And yes, it may very well be that what he's doing is running for vice president. That, again, as Dwight McGee said, that could very well be what his strategy is. That may well be where he'll end up. I don't know. But I do think that basically he's the one who stood out in the debate. And I think among all the non-Trump candidates, he clearly is going to be the one to watch.
I mean, they said he was going to take incoming fire, and he was ready for it and was shooting back. You've got to admire his pluck. I mean, he was ready for that. And I think that people have to understand that this is, what do they say? Politics is show business for ugly people. Clearly, everybody in politics is not ugly, but that's what it is. It's the business. I mean, it's a lot of show business in this thing, everybody. Try to share it with you because we have seen this up close and personal. Arlene says that when Vivek, you have a lot on your mind this morning, Arlene. I wish you'd call in 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. You said when Vivek is on right-wing radio, he is anti-Black on the issues. What do you make of that, Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary? No Juneteenth. Shut up. Don't be woke. What's wrong with it? What?
So number one, I go back to my earlier point, right? The primary is about insular conversations with folks who are already on board, right? They're just trying to figure out who's going to be their standard bearer. This is not the appeal once you get the nomination, and now you have to play back to the center to appeal to the independents who aren't really enamored by either party. That's where you kind of get into your grind. So what this assessment really is about is two things. Number one, you start looking at who gets a bump in terms of the public perception. So the polling data will be interesting, but more importantly, because it speaks to how do you stay on that debate stage, is I want to look at the fundraising numbers that come after last night. The winner after last night and after tonight will clearly be Donald Trump, both in terms of the poll, but also in terms of the fundraising. So at the end of the day, they went through this whole exercise last night. Ron DeSantis fizzed out, absolutely proved like he is not ready for the big stage. The whole wokeism argument is not going to carry.
Stop right there. Hold on. Why do you say that he proved that he was not ready for the big stage? What about him just didn't land with you? And with so many people, no one mentioned him everyone walked away impressed with Vivek Ramaswamy. One walked away talking about Ron DeSantis.
And so if there's a food fight in the cafeteria, you go after the person who's throwing the most food. And so DeSantis kind of sat there and kind of spectated and talked around. Look, get into the mud. Politics is messy. Don't try to come out and say, well, I got in this food fight and I came away clean. Then you didn't get in the food fight. You stood over in the corner and watched. At the end of the day, you got to throw some tomatoes. You got to let a lemon fly. You got to do something. Turn your tray over. Ron DeSantis kind of missed the adult people in the room. It's like he sat at the kids' table over in the other room where you knew you had a plate, you just didn't have a place. And so in the course of this conversation, Vivek decided that he was going to take control of this particular form and draw all of the attention to him and get as close to the reminder that there is someone who can be kind of like a Trump light. But remember, this was not a play for who's going to be the nominee. It's who was auditioning to get the Donald's attention. Where Vivek, I think, may have missed it is the one thing you don't want to do if you're going to be Trump's running mate is to pretend that you're Trump light. You got to leave Trump to Trump. And so I think he's going to find himself in this catch-22 that if he's playing that Trump is not going to be able to get to the ballot in November, he's got to figure out how does he carve out a complementary identity to Donald Trump as the standard bearer to figure out how he gets a place on the ticket. Otherwise, the janitors are appeased this morning that they got all this food on the floor and they ain't figured out who won the food fight yet. They just threw stuff to see who was going to throw stuff, and nobody came away really I think the victor until we see campaign finance numbers and let's see who gets the bump in the polls this morning.
Call us at 773-763-9278. You all are real active on this chat line. Wow. I mean, why do you think it's important to watch the debates, Dwight? These debates, particularly if you're a Democrat or particularly if you love Cornel West. Why should you watch this?
Well, it's important to understand what people are talking about. It's important to understand not just their policy positions, but who they're trying to appeal to and the thinking of the people they're trying to appeal to. Because in most ways, these people running are really framing their ideas and their policies to constituencies that are already invested in those positions. And they're just trying to appeal to positions that have already been carved out. So you know what the opposition is. You don't see the opposition if you're prudent as the people who are on the stage. You see your real opposition as the people who they are trying to appeal to. That's who's going to be voting against you or voting for your opponent. And so the trick is, or the strategy is, how do you neutralize that crowd? Or how do you balance off that crowd? And the only way you can do that is by understanding what that crowd is thinking and how they're thinking. And the best way to gauge that is to listen to what they applaud and listen to what they boo. You know, you have a real fundamental understanding of how the base of the Republican Party is thinking if you will play that reel back from last night and listen to what positions they booed and what positions they clapped for. You really know where their party is trying to go.
Dr. Gibbs, I mean, you are a college professor. When you talk to your students, you're an historian.
Yes.
You know, what do you tell your students? I mean, do you tell them, okay, now, so that we can have a discussion tomorrow about the politics, you know, and increasingly your space is becoming more polarized. God bless you. How do you tell them to, do you have to make an argument for them to watch a debate, or do you think that they should, or where are the kids and what do you tell them?
No, I try to avoid partisan politics in my classes because it's getting a little bit too tense, and it's too tense even to discuss, especially on a college campus. There's always a danger of saying the wrong thing and getting in trouble. It really is an issue now in college campuses. What I do tell them basically is look at who's not being discussed, and in particular, what I note the issue not being discussed, at least at the mainstream level, what the press doesn't want you to talk about, is the Ukraine war and the effect of the Ukraine war, for example, on the domestic economy and people's living standards. Things that are being avoided. I say that it's being talked about more by the Republicans at this point than the Democrats. The mainstream media and the Democratic Party seems to basically look at the press as an issue and pretend it's not happening. I think that's one of the reasons. I think that more than anything else. If you listen, by the way, to Robert Kennedy, here is not so much talk about vaccines or about things like related to vaccines. What you're hearing talking about is the Ukraine war.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so intensely disliked by the Democratic Party because they want to pretend that it's not a political issue. And so I think the suppressed, I encourage students to look at the issues that are being suppressed above everything else.
Well, you it seems you're hated. Dr. King, it was okay to desegregate America. He was controversial, not a problem. Ending Jim Crow, yeah, but when he came out against the Vietnam War, Reverend Dr. Wyatt Walker told him at Riverside Church as soon as he stepped out of that pulpit, he said, "You have just signed your death warrant." There are some libertarians and some people on the right who are speculating, even Tucker Carlson. People have speculated, hey, Donald Trump, you were all right until you said stop all these wars now, until you started trying to talk to North Korea, till you started. I mean, is that what's going on here? I don't know. We're going to be talking to Dr. Max Wolf about this and the money, your money, the money, on the Santita Jackson Show. Call us at 773-763-9278. It just seems that increasingly, when you talk about taking money out the mouths of this military-industrial complex, boy, they get you. I'm back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. I think you guys are onto something. I'm not saying, hey, I'm just putting it out there. I've just, as we say, I've seen this before. I mean, and folks are talking about it. I mean, I wonder, what do you think is going to happen tonight? Do you think that they'll release this mugshot? Anybody?
They will. They will indeed. One thing that Sheriff Labat and I worked on his campaign, and I've tried cases against Fonnie before. They're very much dedicated to this idea of treating these individuals just like anyone else. Now,
Dr. Wolf is on.
But they like to keep up those appearances. Normally, if you go into Fulton County Jail to turn a client in, you're going to be there the rest of the day. You're more than likely not turning around and going to be back out in 5 or 10 minutes. It's a several hour-long process that they've streamlined for these individuals. So I think that we're going to see President Trump dominate this news cycle because after the kind of clown show that many people saw last night, President Trump is going to be able to play this political persecution card. He's going to be able to play this card of, well, I'm standing up for the American people, and if it's not me, this is what your other options are. And I think he's going to fundraise off of this. They're already selling T-shirts in Atlanta. They're already selling Trump Rice Street merchandise, those sorts of things.
What?
And I think that this is going to be the story of the week.
Stop. What? It's selling what?
Trump on Rice Street. Our jail is called the Rice Street Jail. So it's Trump on Rice Street, Trump on Bankhead, all those. You got the T-shirt vendors right outside the street you turn on to go to the jail. So this is going to be a big moneymaker for Trump and everyone else.
I told you that a month ago that they was going to be that mugshot would be on a T-shirt. I told you that.
But I do appreciate that this is black folks making money selling T-shirts.
I don't know. I think when anyone indulges in the crazy, I think it's all nuts. This is crazy.
Santita, there's going to be I can see Trump asking for.
I said you last week.
Hold on 1 second, Reverend Erie.
Yeah, I can see Trump asking for his mugshot on the way out the door. He wants to release it before the sheriff makes it public. At the end of the day, what this narrative last night is going to show, and it's going to come out in Trump's comments today, is that his whole argument is they're coming after me because they're coming after you. Is going to be borne out in this whole thing that you saw the play last night with the imitators of Trump. Now you can understand why they're coming after me today. Here's my mugshot. But this is really not about me. It really is about you. That's going to be the theme that he's going to put the wind on his back, and it's going to propel him to probably widen his margin, even in the midst of 4 active indictments. And at the same time, he's going to raise a grip load of money, not just
1 minute
for his campaign, but for his legal defense fund. It's going to be the most amazing demonstration of what good marketing looks like That's what this has come down to. The marketing exercise of last night was a flop. They're going to see what real marketing looks like, and it's starting right about now as you start running through the morning drive time.
Well, Dr. Wolf, I'm glad you're here. And you see, we've got Dr. David Gibbs from the University of Arizona. We've got Attorney Robert
30
Patillo,
seconds.
all these people who love you to pieces, Reverend Dr. Erie and Dwight McKee. I certainly want you to weigh in on this as we pivot to talking about the money. Dr. Wolf, you there?
I was distracted by trying to get my T-shirt, my Trump on Rice Street T-shirt online, but I think I'm back with you.
10 seconds.
So I think I'm going to have an unusual opinion here.
Well, hold on. I love it. Just stay right there. Hold on.
Okay.
We're coming in. We're coming in, and I'm here for it.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, it's Thursday. You know what time it is, Dr. Maxwell time as we talk about the economy. But the economy, all roads lead to election 2024. And of course, last night we got a little bit of a taste of it with the Republican debate, which we've been talking about. And of course, we'll get more of a taste of it this evening when President Trump surrenders to arrest. Will he have a mugshot? That's what we're hearing. And of course, Robert Patillo, you're a lawyer. You are a lawyer in Atlanta. You have had to face off against Fani Willis. What's this process going to look like before we pivot to Dr. Wolf? Will there be a mugshot? Will he have to take off his clothes and when he's processed, all of that?
More than likely, he won't have to strip naked, and they probably aren't going to put him in an orange jumpsuit, as we've seen with the other co-defendants. But he will be brought in. He will be fingerprinted. He will have a mugshot that will be released to the public. Now in Georgia, he's not going to enter a plea today. He's simply going in for processing. They'll have a plea and arraignment date sometime in September where he'll have to come back in and plead not guilty. And his team very much is in conversations with the district attorney's office on everything from discovery to pretrial motions to potential trial dates. Fani Willis has said she wants to try this case within 6 months. That's not going to happen. Just letting everybody know that is very important that people understand that, as I said, this case is the most likely case to put Donald Trump in an actual jail cell of all the cases, including the January 6th investigation and the document case. This is the most likely that he'll serve jail time on, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. Indeed, this case might draw out so long that he can serve an entire second term in the White House before after having an adjudication to the case. But it's going to be a very long and slow process, particularly this number of co-defendants, this number of motions that are going to be taking place, motions to sever, motions to remove, etc. And I think that Donald Trump's lawyer is one of my best friends, Drew Findling, who's a lawyer for me and him worked on a case with Gucci Mane together years ago. But Drew is the best in the business, and if anyone's going to put together a coherent defense for Donald Trump, it's going to be Drew Findling. And I think people just need to make sure that they're paying attention to the process, not getting ahead of themselves, as the cable news media often encourages you to do, and understand it's going to be a process going forward, and everyone has the right to his own defense at a day in court.
Well, Dr. Maxwell, there's a whole lot to nibble at before we get to the treasuries and all of that. What did you make of last night's debate?
So I didn't think there was much to nibble on there. I mean, that was sort of a rogues gallery of people who've gone wrong in their career, embarrassing themselves, with one or two exceptions, to be fair. But I like how it started with, do you believe in the rule of law? No. It's not good for my party. So, I mean, that was it, right? Like, if you care about the content, it was kind of over at the beginning. And so, it's the usual. I know it'll work with the fans, and I'm not the target audience. And so my opinion is not really interesting in terms of who they're trying to speak to, right? But I watched a bunch of people who were trying out to be second or third place in a binary outcome scenario, right? I think, everybody's interested in Ron DeSantis. I think I try to avoid these conversations that are invented by the news media and then adjudicated by the news media, and then the decisions are reported by the news media. And I think actually Donald Trump is an example.
Okay, you know, we're getting you. I want to get you, Dr. Wolf, I want to get you in the right place because you're going in and out. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. I didn't move, but hopefully it's better. You can tell me.
Okay, keep talking.
Okay. The phone has both cellular and Wi-Fi. If I take off the Wi-Fi, sometimes it makes the cellular signal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cellular is better. So I just took it off.
Okay.
Maybe that helps.
That helps a lot. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't like this game of invent a devil and then have to fight the devil. Right? So, and I think Donald Trump is just what happens there, right? It's a sort of a blank canvas, and then we invent all kinds of things. Like, hey, look at the way he fell down the stairs on his face. What a master. Everybody was waiting to see what part of him would hit the stairs next. And I think it's all fabricated. So I have a hard time finding what you'd hang on to here, right? This looks like a desperate old criminal facing another set of prosecutions. He's been good at not going to jail in the past. He certainly has lots of lawyers, although all of his lawyers do seem to declare bankruptcy or end up in prison. Presumably the lawyer community is aware of this, but they want the publicity and they all think they're going to be the one who does well. Maybe they will be. But, I guess I'm a statistician, right? So if somebody is 8 for 8, I usually assume they're not going to go the other way on the 9th run, but who knows, right? So I feel like this guy will only win if nobody shows up for the election. There's always a distinct possibility. And one of the many issues with the two-party system is there's no way to count out either party, right? The people in the Republican Party believe, and they probably know their people better than I know them, that Donald Trump is the only thing energizing the party that collapsed. Not because of Donald Trump, but Donald Trump was only able to come along because the party had largely effectively collapsed, right? So his cult of personality seems to be what they think is left of an excited base. I assume they're probably right. They know their people. But it looks to me like he upstaged their debate with his Tucker Carlson interview. And that's all I need to know. If you can upstage something by having an interview with Tucker Carlson, I know what the game is. And then the other people look like they wanted to be upstaged because they want to run on his charisma or his fans because they don't really have their own yet anyway. And so I see what that's about. But I think Donald Trump is a bit of a made-up devil. And when you fabricate a devil, you then have to fight the devil.
What do you?
To me, he looks like a morbidly obese. He looks like a morbidly obese older imbecile who's good at getting attention, who's a carnival barker in a country where there's a place for a carnival barker who presses the right buttons. He himself said that when he said things like, "If I ever run, I'll run in the Republican Party because all I have to tell these people is that all the things they think that the people who are telling them are wrong are actually right. Once I do that for them, once I absolve them, they'll put up with all of my sin." That was actually pretty smart. Right? And then as a carnival barker, he's good at drawing the attention to himself, often by doing things that other people who have some sense of decency or decorum won't do, but still smart. And lots of people want the attention and he gets it. So I think he's quite good at that. But I think it's all kind of made up. It's all without much substance, except for that it has really substantial impacts on the country. Right? And so to me, it's hard not to see that. And just for whatever's left of our democracy and our stature in the world, diminished though it might be, a second Trump term will probably do irreparable damage. And I think, COVID was certainly a part of the story, but I think the United States managed 40 years of national decline in a 4-year period, and it has not recovered. And there's nothing about the Biden administration that looks like it's going to be able to bring us back even to where we were in that sad and sorry moment when Trump lost but managed to be the president the first time. Which is probably part of what led to the temper tantrum when he lost the second time and wasn't able to be the president anyway.
Well, do you think that this could be like this show, if you will, is a giant smokescreen to obscure the things that we ought to be looking at? I mean, look, most people are angered about the fact that their money is not working for them, or what the money they work for doesn't cover them. They can't afford rent.
Or their money just is not. They don't have any. Their money is not. They don't even need anything after that.
So talk to me about the economy and what we're not talking about, because I didn't hear anything offered on stage yet last night that spoke to the fact that this study that came out this week that showed that Black people will need 513 years 513 years to achieve economic equality in the United States. No one's talking about that at all, Republican or Democrat. And I think
I don't see the problem there. I don't see any problems there. Are you saying some of these people are too lazy to work for 513 years? That sounds like a personal decision. So look, obviously there's a lot of issues here. But when we got economic commentary, and to be fair to the Republican Party, the Democrats aren't long on economic commentary either. We get bromides. We get sort of stories, half-truths and feel-good fictions that are often 30, 40, 50 years old, right? So the Republicans still kind of have the Reagan critique, which is, hey, these liberal big society programs we have are too extensive and the taxes are too high. But 50 years into slashing those programs and taxes, it's a weird thing to say, right? This is like when your parent comes in the room and tells you, son, you can't go on your own in the car. You're too young. And you realize, oh my God, this guy's got Alzheimer's. I'm 50 and he's 80, right? Like that story is weird if you're in high school. If you're in high school and grandpa's telling you that, you take this person to see some significant mental health care and physical health care specialists fast. So if your story doesn't change and the world does, you're wrong. Destroyed synopsis, right? So I don't think we got much on the economy other than austerity, by the way. So we got, hey, too much stimulus, too much debt. And look, there is too much debt, but the analysis is we helped too many people on Medicare and Medicaid and food stamps, which are fairly trivial, by the way, in terms of their cost. And so we need to get rid of the social programs so that we can have lower taxes. And just nobody is interested in the reality of we've been doing that for 50 years. The social fabric is tattered. We now have some of the lowest effective corporate tax rates, probably the lowest effective and one of the lowest headline tax rates. And we have the stingiest, least adequate social safety net of all developed and some developing countries. So it can't always be true, right? And the Democratic kind of pitch is usually the same, which is we're less bad than those guys. And they are, but I'm not sure that's inspiring. And I think people are in a tough situation. And when people are in an extreme situation, they tend to be more excited by extreme voices. And given the lack of political sophistication and the lack of choices that Americans have at the polls, and the lack of depth of our political commitments often here, they're going to pick the angriest voice. Or they're going to pick the best show. Right? And maybe DeSantis muscled in a little bit on the angriest voice, but it doesn't, something's wrong there that's self-evident quickly. So I think that won't sort of take with voters.
He's not working. He's really not working.
But this is the person who's telling you they love you because they want to ride in the car or dinner or a place to sleep, right? And at some point you're like, this is worse than if you just asked for the ride, right? Like, this is just extra creepy. Now you're not getting in my car unless you're getting in the trunk, right? So there's no way. Yes, I don't think he's connecting, right? I'm not sure I would. I'm sure that's hard to do, but he doesn't seem to be connecting, right? So, look, if you just want a show, maybe the wrestling community, the wrestling fandom was easily able to switch over. I think Trump had some dance with that crowd and he gets it. And he's a good carnival worker.
Well, let me ask you, what is the discussion you think we need to be forcing in this 2024 cycle?
I think there's some big ones. How many people in this country think they should be able to pick the outcome of the democratic process? And if it doesn't go their way, they don't believe in it and they won't support it. That's a big issue, okay? How much inequality is too much inequality? That's a big one we need to be talking about, right? And then we have to make a very basic decision. Should people who work for a living reasonably hard be able to have some modicum of a middle-class life in America? Right now, they can't. But our self-identity is that they can. So we have to start making policies based on if we do not do something to increase wages and increase social services and public goods, just the basics, transit, education, pension, healthcare, right? Then we are going to be a developing country with more guns and more fat people than the other developing countries, right? And for a lot of people, we already are. But I mean, that's not nice, but I don't think it's wrong.
You're right.
And then I think
you're right.
The other big crisis every single person knows we have is it's too hard to be a human being in America.
Why do you say
and that takes an incredible, because there's no room to be human. So our kindest, softest people go crazy. And they can go crazy lots of ways. They can go crazy with substances, because a lot of that self-medication, the substance abuse pandemic in the country, which is real for sure. And that some of them go crazy by just going old-fashioned crazy, having significant mental health care issues, right? And we make it super easy to get a gun and super hard to get mental health care. And we now know that cocktail is randomly killing our citizens in high numbers.
Stay right there. I mean,
and so
please.
Those are the big ones. We all know them too. I'm not adding anything to anyone's agenda here that they haven't thought about for years.
I mean, Dr. Gibbs, it's too hard to be human in America. I think, Max just tosses off things that are so brilliant. He just takes them for granted. My brother, Congressman Jackson, said that about him. He said, his random thoughts are so brilliant, they stop you in your tracks. But it is hard to be human in America. It really is, Dr. Gibbs.
Well, yes, I mean, it is. There's no doubt. The United States,
you have a caller.
Dictators is behind every other rich country in the world. I mean, most directly in healthcare, things like life expectancy, infant mortality, maternal mortality. The U.S. lags every other rich country. And there's no real need for this. I mean, the money is there. And people say we can't afford universal health care. Well, Portugal is a poorer country than the United States. They have less money per capita than we do, and they have universal health care magically. So these are solvable problems. There just is a will not to solve them. Guns, gun control. I mean, we could solve that problem basically by, for example, banning at least assault weapons. But it doesn't seem to be the political will to do that. America's really become a very dysfunctional polity. They're basic problems, social problems America has. That are solvable, we just choose not to solve them because our political system has become dysfunctional. Donald Trump, to some extent, he's played upon the public's dissatisfaction with our social problems, our declining living standards, the sense of lying and dishonesty. He's a product of public dissatisfaction with all those problems. He doesn't remotely have a solution. In many ways, of course, he's made these things worse. But no doubt that contributed to Trump's rise, the fact that the existing political structure is dysfunctional. And he kind of ridicules existing politicians. He has a ton of ridicule to his talk that I think is, as a nasty side, it's certainly a very nasty tone, but I think it plays well with the public because there is a sense the public is fed up with these social problems. And they're willing to endorse a charlatan like Donald Trump who claims he has a solution when quite clearly he doesn't. But at least he sounds as if he's going to do something, even if he has nothing. He has no solution, but he sounds different from the rest, and I think that's exactly why he's so popular, why he remains popular today.
Marketing.
Well, see, I would say that it's not dysfunctional. I would say it functions exactly as it's supposed to function, which is to protect the economic class and protect the status quo. I think that everything that we see politically is a shell game, and the real game is protect the existing status quo and the capitalist class who controls all of the money and all of the media, and they tell us what to think about them, and they act like these things can't be solved because they really don't want them solved because they make money off them being not solved.
Absolutely. Let me bring in Renee. Renee had a question or a comment for you, Dr. Wolf. Renee, what's on your mind?
Just really quickly, if you know what the Frankfurt analysis
hold on, Renee.
of the rise of the far right in Germany, there's an interesting parallel, right? And that parallel is Donald Trump is how the wealthy and powerful see the white working class. He is who they think those people are. It's quite insulting. And I think some people figure that out, that he's sort of like an orange molester who says crazy stuff and is violent and dangerous. And that is the view of the white working class from the people who run the country. So they gave those people a gift, which confirms their view of them.
Renee, what's on your mind? Wow.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Last night I looked for the debate. I found it. I happen to still have cable. I haven't cut the cord. So I was able to locate it on one of the Fox channels. That's a problem because that means if you don't have cable, you don't have access to know that there are more people running than just Trump and Biden. Well, the Democrats weren't in it last night, but if you're cutting off people's access to know that there are other choices out there, they don't even think there's a possibility of voting for anybody except for the man who's currently indicted in 4 different places or 4 different charges, or for Biden, who might be impeached soon because of some of his dealings with the Ukraine and his son, where he actually was on phone calls. So the media shapes the narrative of who the possibilities are. And if people don't have the money to have the internet, and I couldn't find it on the internet, the debates may have been on the internet. I didn't see them, but I saw it on cable until I fell asleep. Many people didn't see it. There are too many people too poor to pay almost $300 for cable every month, and not everybody has the internet. So Mr. McKee is saying the people who run the thing, they're shaping the narrative. They're shaping a story that gets out there, and they're cutting off access. And if people knew there were other people on that stage last night, they may have said, "Hey, I like what he's saying. I didn't like what most of them were saying." But there are people who may have appealed to the governor, Hutchinson of Arkansas. He would have appealed to some of the people who are evangelists. Evangelics may have, well, I don't know how they could Penselton, who kept bringing up God, but he doesn't believe in taking care of the people's health care and making sure people have food and shelter based on the policies that he's behind. But some people may have liked what he was saying, or some of the other ones who are on that stage. Hopefully, it won't be the young, what's his name, the billionaire Ramaswamy.
Access. I mean, I think spending less money getting the message or the debate to people makes a lot of sense if you're spending this much money to make sure they can't vote. I mean, if you're going to these efforts to make sure people can't vote, spending a lot of money to show them the debate just seems kind of cruel. It's window shopping for the broke. And we are spending quite a bit of money to disenfranchise people now. You wouldn't want to see them wasting that money on televising the debate to you when they could use it to make sure you can't vote.
Well, let me ask you this then these last couple of minutes here, because we are in the election 2024 cycle, not just nationally, but statewide races, local races, countywide races. I mean, and people are hurting economically, Dr. Wolf. We're hurting out
and
here.
In other ways, but I think socially they're hurting too. I mean, I think the isolation and the damage of the pandemic hasn't really been confronted or dealt with much. And I think for sure economically, right? But there's other ways people are hurting. We were a very isolated, very alone people, and we are more isolated and more alone now. And that was hurting before, it's hurting more now.
So just going forward, what should we be thinking about in this election cycle?
I mean, I think there's an opportunity in the rubble here, which is the parties are dying because they're mostly kind of fundraising and getting on the ballot machines. And now, especially one party completely just sells off to whatever billionaires give individuals money, and those people become viable. The role of the parties has declined. That opens the space for the people to do what you're actually kind of supposed to do in a representative system, which is select their candidates and then select from among their candidates. The select your candidates has been sort of turned over to the parties, and I think you could make a reasonable argument that it hasn't gone altogether smoothly.
Dr. Max Wolf, everybody. I know you got to leave, but, I thank you for all the time that you give us and all of these thoughts.
Always my pleasure.
Oh, love you so much. Dwight McKee, Dr. Gibbs, please stay with me because I would like you all to make some closing statements. Dr. Wolf has got to run to a meeting right now. Everybody, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Alex, thank you for a magnificent show. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow. Of course, we'll be talking about the Trump surrender to arrest tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Unless something else happens, you never know. Love you, everybody. God bless. Dr. Gibbs, what's our takeaway from last night?
Renee hung up.
Oh,
Donald Trump remains the front runner, clearly. So much so that he did not have to appear at the debate. As others on the panel have noted, the indictment, the public humiliation is going to be presented with in Fulton County today. All of these things will probably play to his advantage, at least in the Republican Party. And that, it's highly probable he will be the Republican nominee. And I would give him at least a 50-50 shot at becoming the next president. I don't think that the Democrats have never really effectively addressed the issue of why does half the country look to Donald Trump as their solution. The Democrats seem to only think of the idea of trying to indict him or impeach him in the past and can never come up with any kind of real analysis of why is he so popular and what can the Democrats do to match his popularity. And until they do that, I don't really see, the divisiveness that has sort of fractured this country being overcome.
Dwight McKee?
I think the doc was right on point today in pretty much all his positions. The Democratic Party is really not devoid of ideas. They misrepresent themselves in that they act as if they're trying to fight for ideas that they really don't believe in. Is that they are the party of the status quo. At some levels, even more than Republicans, but they need to represent themselves that they are progressive and unique and for the people, and so it makes them a very schizophrenic organization. They neutralize the progressive whenever the progressives get momentum. They neutralize them. Whenever you raise questions about the existing politicians, they neutralize you for doing that. Makes them a very bipolar political party. And so the only thing they have to work with is trying to make the Republicans and Donald Trump criminals, to be honest with you. That's the only real strategy they have, because the policies do not reflect the philosophy, quote unquote, the philosophy. Or the energy of the party. And so I think that, again, I agree with Dr. Gibbs that the one that's going to walk out of here with the momentum is Donald Trump, because he has the best skill set at knowing how to play adversity. He's going to turn adversity into a friend, and he's going to play the martyr. I said 3 weeks ago that he was going to be selling these T-shirts, and not just the T-shirts. They're going to make a cottage industry out of this this prison situation.
But you know what, Dwight?
And
you know, Dwight and Dr. Gibbs, I think what they're missing, or they're trying to misdirect us from this, Americans are very dispirited and angry. You know, you open up the century with the collapse of the housing market, and then everything just came apart. The wheels came off of the wagon in 2008, and we never recovered from that, ever. We thought we would when we got Barack Obama as the president. Wall Street got protected. We got neglected, and here we still are. You've got students who have trillions of dollars worth of debt. They can't finish school. They can't get out their house. University of Chicago is $100,000 a year undergrad, everybody. Now, the U of C and Stanford and MIT, they're like considered, they're like 12 Ivies. You got the traditional Ivies, but you had U of C, you had Stanford, you had MIT. That rounds out the Ivies for us. And one other school that I'm forgetting at the moment, at present. What we're looking for is people. That's what I'm saying. A lot of different people are looking for these candidates are Rorschach tests. If Ramaswamy, let me just say this, Dwight, is able to say a lot of things because he's challenging orthodoxies. He challenged the orthodoxies on 9/11 yesterday, a couple of days ago with Caitlin Collins, and people were upset about it. Not so upset that they ran him out the race, because guess what? That's where Americans are, Dwight and Dr. Gibbs. Americans
at
are
the
sick
same
of
time,
everything, sick of it all.
Yeah, at the same time, millionaires becoming billionaires and billionaires becoming trillionaires.
Unbelievable.
And so it's not like there's not the money available. It's like the money is being inverted. And so it's something about the system, this political system, that has geared itself to enrich the people, the existing rich, and then impoverish those who are already on the brink of poverty. And so they're doing it in such a way that they want us to like it and smile about it. There's a little scene that in an old movie where the gangster Humphrey Bogart, I think he pushed a lemon in a woman's face and said, he slaps her and said, "You're going to take it and you're going to like it." And that's what they did, how they did with us, that we're going to take it and we're going to like it.
And people are getting sick of it. And that is what you're seeing. That, Dr. Gibbs, that's what you're seeing. And I don't know where this is going to go because of that feeling out here, Dr. Gibbs.
Yeah. Well, I think that, the key event, there have been two key events here that I think have really upended the political system. One is precisely one that you've identified, Santita, which is the 2008 financial blowout, which seemed to reveal the American system is sort of shot through with corruption economically. And then when that's deeply rigged against ordinary people and in favor of concentrated wealth. And, a second one that has to be noted is the war on terror, the response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks by the Bush administration, and really by both parties. It was very much bipartisan, which I think, again, the public initially supported with great enthusiasm and went extremely badly and was shown to be based on, let's be frank here, a pack of lies. And it was exposed to the pack of lies, one that was pursued at a great cost to the American public, both in terms of lives of soldiers as well as financial costs. And so I think those two key events, the fact that the Obama presidency, which I think was initially elected to deal with the after effects of the public dissatisfaction, and let's be frank here, is inadequacy in dealing with those issues. The fact that, as you noted, he protected Wall Street when he came into power. He did not pursue any kind of investigation of the lies that led to the war on terror. Then he continued the idea of sort of forever wars, intensifying with the overthrow of Gaddafi, which led to another catastrophe. He had Victoria Nuland appointed at the State Department, leading to the current crisis in the Ukraine. All of these things basically, I think, dispirited the public with both parties. And I think that the breakdown of trust, very dramatic, including the trust in the mainstream media, I think that's much of the background to the rise of Donald Trump. and the continued popularity of Donald Trump, as well as other candidates, such as, for example, Robert Kennedy. And I'm hoping increasingly people like Cornel West. I think all of this basically results from a failure of policy in basic ways by both parties over the last 20 years.
Dwight McKee? I absolutely agree with you.
Again, you about to say something?
No, I was just saying I absolutely agree with you, with Dr. Gibbs. Absolutely, because no one looks at what happened in 2008. Remember, the system, the communication system at the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Congress, both the House and the Senate, was collapsed because Americans were so outraged by the news that Goldman Sachs had given Nancy Pelosi a 2.5-page memo saying that if you don't give us this money today, your economy will be shut down by Monday. Americans then said, don't give them the money, shut it down. We'd already given them almost $20 trillion, trillion with a T. That's what the Dodd-Frank audit showed. And what did they do? And wait a minute, hold on. And people were holding out. And you know what? Barack, who was running for president at the time, called the Black Caucus and said, hey, just vote to give them the money. He used his goodwill. I remember my brother, who was in Congress at the time, he was on the radio in tears, because I know my brother. I knew he was in tears because he was just devastated. He was like, we have an opportunity to do something here. That's not what happened. And people have never gotten over that, Dwight. They're angry. And of course, the corporate media is not going to talk about how angry the American public are. But all they're doing is we're just watching the anger grow, watching it grow. And you know what? You're not going to be able to control it in a minute.
Yeah, but it's also what Dr. Gibbs says, it's a preponderance of it. It also goes back to 9/11 and how they manipulated that to declare war on people who had nothing to do with 9/11 and to enhance the value of the war machine at the expense of, poor people of color overseas. Same crowd, because the ones who benefited from that was the warmongers and the Wall Street crowd who invest in these companies. And when you looked at Goldman Sachs, head of the Treasury Department, every year for about 12 years in a row, in the same crowd that controlled the Federal Reserve, is people began to start putting pieces together to see that they were just being used for the benefit of other people's riches. And not just, their resources being transferred to the rich, but the lives of their children being sacrificed for the rich. And so it has created a real apprehension, a real anger and hostility that the country has, because they see this going on and really almost feel helpless in terms of how do you deal with it, which kind of explain a lot of the violence, because a lot of this violence is growing out of people's sense of brutality, that they see these things going on and don't know how to deal with it. And so they just get violent and start shooting at people because they're so frustrated at what they see that they don't feel like they have any power to deal with.
Well, so where do we go from here, Dr. Gibbs?
Well, I think the solution would be, what I'm hoping, basically, honestly, just in a practical sense, is that Cornel West will basically draw significant support, maybe even from both parties, in the general election, and that he will sort of crystallize the idea that there is another alternative. I don't think there's no chance he's going to be elected president. I realize that, but what I would like to see is a breakup of the two-party system, which we really need to see here, because it's become so ossified and such a barrier to really addressing the basic problems that we've been discussing today. And at this point, I'd have to be very frank and say, I'm really somewhat indifferent as to whether or not a Cornel West would lead to an election of Donald Trump, whether or not that happens. I think the more important thing, I think that the real priority here is to create some conception of an alternative to the two-party system. And so I think the two-party system, basically, at least the existing parties that we have today, really has to go because they're an impediment to any kind of solution.
I mean, the thing is, look, they say that Cornel West shouldn't run, Robert Kennedy shouldn't run because you're going to upset the apple cart. That is really a bullying tactic that is used to shut Americans down. The only people who lose are us. Roger Stone even told Donald Trump before they blocked him from television. He said, look, I told Mr. Trump, you have the opportunity to bust the two-party system. You can win, and you can win big. You can unite black, white, yellow, brown, red. The people on the right, the people on the left, because those are his politics. People who have known Donald Trump a long time, and we have known him a long time. He's a businessman. He's transactional. He walks right down the middle, okay? Democrat, Republican, not really a Republican, more of a libertarian. He was going to run on goodness gracious, Ross Perot's ticket in 2000. That's what he was planning to do, which was right down the middle. The only mistake Ross Perot made was when he went to that NAACP meeting and talked about you people, even though we all knew what he was talking about. That having been said, yeah, I mean, because look, he made sense to me. I would have worked for him. I was not signing up for the right wing of the Democratic Party, which is what Bill Clinton represented. He's someone who I like very much personally. But his politics I've never been into. The right wing of the party, the DLC, was formed, they said, to counteract the impact of the Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Coalition and the 2.5 million voters he's brought on in this election cycle. That's where they came in. So they sent us Al Gore in 1988, and Reverend put him down. Reverend decided not to run in 92. He was a presumptive front runner, although they didn't want to give him that. But this is the history here. Let's get real. We've always been running against the right-wing corporatists in the party. I'm not with that. I'm not with that faction of the party. Those are not our politics. And here we are. Americans are poorer than ever, and the oligarchs are wealthier than ever. We've watched the greatest wealth transfer in the history of the world. And it accelerated under COVID when you were forced to stay home or go to work at the hospital and not be given a mask. Huh? Oh, please. People have a right to be angry, but you need to be constructive. Use your feelings constructively and build. It was in that context that Roger Stone said, hey, man, you can bust the whole system and come up with a whole new thing. He said, my disappointment in Mr. Trump is that he went for the low-hanging fruit. And he decided to go for the white nationalist. But in the context in which he ran, Hillary had the mainstream Democrats and women, many women, and Bernie had all the progressives. So boom, he took what was left and tapped into that American strain of white nationalism and white supremacy, and there it is. But that does not explain the growing number of Black men who embrace him now, the growing number of Latinos, but particularly Black men, because Latinos can be white too. That's what they do. They move off to the white side when they can. Everybody does. The only people who can't do that are Black people. So here we are. Nobody's eating. You got 7 million more people who are hungry in America today than were in 2022. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about that? 513 years for Black people to reach economic equality. I don't have 513 years. And America doesn't either. I don't know if the Republic can last that long. That's where we are right now. We're trying to figure out if the Republic is going to survive. Oh, Dwight and Dr. Gibbs. I don't know what to say. So what did you say? Arlene says the two-party system is what we have. It's today's reality. We had slavery too, Arlene. We had Jim Crow too. Rosa Parks said, I am not moving. Claudette Colvin said it before her just a few months before. I ain't moving. The reality was you had these mean people who had a system that they would kill you to keep in place. to keep you on the back of that bus. Don't tell me about reality. Our lives have been about changing reality for you, me, and our children. If we didn't think that way, segregation would still be in place. And for heaven's sakes, Britain would still be ruling over the United States. You got to change reality. I don't want to hear about the reality of today. I want to talk about the possibility of tomorrow. That's what I'm fighting for. I love you, but we absolutely disagree on that. If I lived on reality, I wouldn't be able to move. What'd you say? The American sunset has already begun along with this world system, Robert Williams? Yeah, you're watching the BRICS nations rise. You're watching the colonies, the colonized, who telling their colonizers no. Niger, Mali, Chad, and Burkina Faso, and all of these countries said, if you don't, NATO, don't you come in here? ECOWAS, you Western-leaning African politicians, you better stay out of our way. You're going to have a problem here. Something has changed in the world, y'all. And I hope it changes in America, too. And I believe that it has. You look at our children, they have gone down the road on progressive politics. You're not supposed to be in a country with 330 million people, Dr. Gibbs, and have 920,000 hospital beds. You never intend on anyone being well. I didn't say on people getting sick. They know folks going to get sick. They have enough toxins out here that we have to live with every day. They know folks going to get sick. They don't intend for us to get well, Dr. Gibbs. We don't even have 1 million hospital beds in the United States. And we're closing hospitals every day.
One of the major impediments to change in the United States, I think, is a widespread elite message you're getting, for example, from the New York Times, the mainstream media, that it's impossible to change things. It's impossible, for example, to get the two parties to change or to get a different party. It's impossible to get, let's say, universal health care, and it'll never happen. So you should just drop the idea. And, I guess the implication is the more they send that message, the more likely people will believe it and just become passive and inert and not actually take action. But, I think people forget change occurs all the time in history. In 1850, I'm sure there are lots of people who said, oh, slavery will never end in this country. That's just a pipe dream. Forget about it. I'm sure basically in, 1910 in the world, people said colonialism will never end. I mean, it's just the way it is, the way it's going to be. And lo and behold, it did come to an end. And, history provides opportunities for change all the time. And I think basically people should not buy into this idea that change can't come to the United States, that that's an impossibility, because there's no reason to think it's an impossibility.
It's already happening.
Yeah,
it's already happening. It's already happening. Go to different kids' proms, Dr. Gibbs, Dwight McKee. These kids, they date interracially, transsexually. They do what they feel is best for them. Just let that go. The change has already occurred, y'all. We're the ones who are behind the times here. It's hard to find. It's hard to find a white, or certainly a black and white, a black couple on TV. Everybody's interracially married. They have taken that stuff off the table. Things have gone on down the street. But what hasn't gone down the street is our economic insecurity and the fact that America's business is business, and the whole point was never for you to be free. The whole point was never for you to have any money. This was always about the monarchy and the oligarchy having a fight. They weren't about empowering anyone else. They imported all of the nobility from Europe to have a fight between the French and the English. Okay, that's where we are. And the question is today, how much of our land does the Queen still own? Because of alloidal rights. I mean, come on, y'all. We have to start thinking. Start thinking. And look for not entertainment, but enlightenment. That's why I looked at that debate last night. I wanted to see, where are they trying to take us? Who is Ramaswamy? How did they find this one? Where are they leading us? Where is Trump going to take us? Because he's going to take us somewhere. Because he is now angry. It's going to be interesting.
Well, Trump is another example. Trump is another example of how processes do change. I mean, nobody ever thought someone like Trump could be elected. Obviously, you could say that's changed for the worse. In a lot of ways, it was for the worse, clearly. But it does indicate things are in flux right now, and a lot of things people thought were impossible are happening before our very eyes. Nobody ever thought, basically, Trump would get elected in the first place. There's all sorts of, nobody thought that Trump would be indicted for the simple reason no ex-president has ever been indicted. I think we should give up on the idea that change is impossible in this country. It's happening right now. I guess the big question is, will it be positive change or negative change?
There's that. There's that.
So I'm hoping that basically, again, the idea basically of breaking up the two-party system, I think that would be a positive change in my view. That would be a good thing.
Well, people need options. The two-party system, this is what my father says, one bird, two wings. That's all.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what it is. And we're being shortchanged. And if you want to be a part of this system, you have got to participate in it. It only works when you work it. We're going to have to get involved, everybody. You need to be asking, where is Cornel West? Because you need to call corporate media and demand that he be presented on their platforms. And Robert Kennedy, without the crazy biases. He doesn't even talk about these vaccines. And he didn't even say that these shots should be outlawed. He said they should be checked. They're still under emergency use authorization. They've not even been cleared by the FDA yet. Why aren't you asking questions about that? That could get me put off the radio or put off this platform. And that's shameful. Shameful. Come on, everybody. Wake up. Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, I suppose, one other thing, I guess, is that, there's been a bipartisan consensus in favor of sort of endless war. And there's always a perception that we shouldn't discuss that as an issue. It shouldn't be raised as an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're seeing in the sort of corporate media is indeed a message that this isn't a political issue. Everybody agrees on the need for endless war. Even though the polls have already shown the public has lost confidence in the U.S. policy in Ukraine. The public does not want to spend any more money. At least the majority of them does not want to spend more money on the Ukraine war. They'd rather spend it on things like, let's say, rebuilding, the island of Maui.
Yeah.
You're not getting, it's not having enough of an echo at the level of political debate. Certainly, we're not seeing enough of that yet. There's very little acknowledgement. If you read the New York Times, this is a political issue at all. And I think that's something else that really has to change. We need to open up the range of debate in the country. Things that are considered taboo need to stop being taboo. And one of those things is the idea of sort of permanent war.
Mm-hmm.
That really has to come up for public discussion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You ought to be tired of this, because the people who talk against permanent war, they're the ones who get slammed. And yeah, I'm going to say something unpopular. And Trump is one of those persons. You could, whatever his motives, I want out of Ukraine, and I want them to have peace, and I want to move forward. I want out of all of these countries all over the world. Did you see what happened in Maui? Have you checked out Twitter or now X? These people, when President Biden went down there, they were furious. They said it took you 2 weeks to get here. And you've offered me $700, and you've voted $20+ billion, if not twice more, twice that amount, to Ukraine. For what?
Yeah. And he also fell asleep at the ceremony. But anyway.
Gosh, no. I mean, and then you're looking for the kids. You know where the kids are. The kids were at home. They were incinerated. It's horrible. The kids were home that day, Dr. Gibbs.
We have no,
we're not going to know.
I don't even know how many people died. Yeah.
We're not going to know. We know how many are missing. And we know, we're not talking to the parents. We know that most of them were children because they were home that day, because they have had issues with the grid. That's where the kids were. The kids were at home. You ought to be disgusted by this. And then you offer them $700 a family? What? Have you been to Hawaii? Trust and believe. Hawaii is one of the most expensive places on earth, y'all. $700 won't get you a good hotel room for one night.
Yeah, it's a bad situation that basically you have, the party that's supposed to be the party of, the ordinary person, the Democratic Party, has long ago abandoned that in practice. Biden's economic record, it's not really filtering down to the public. I mean, even in places that haven't had the disasters of Maui, I think that the public still has not had most of their wages catch up to what they lost during the inflation, even if inflation is now being moderated. One of the things that is I'm not convinced. Some have said that the problem that Biden faces is optics and messaging. I'm not convinced that's really true, because I think people, when they make up their minds about whether the economy is in good shape or not, they look with their own two eyes at what they're seeing in terms of, how am I doing? Am I doing better than I was 4 years ago? Are my neighbors doing better than they were 4 years ago? And I think what they're seeing is they're not doing that well. And I think that's the reason Biden is in trouble. His popularity is not very high right now. I think that more than anything else is the reason, the economy.
No, of course it is. When the money gets funny, so does the honey, all the way around.
Yeah.
No, people struggling out here, struggling, and it's getting worse. People who are able to invest, I would say even during the Trump years, I've heard it from people. They say, hey, I'm losing money now. Something's not working here. Then you continue to shovel money to Ukraine. I'm all about freedom, and I'm with it. I hear you. I'd like it here too. You're talking about securing somebody else's vote, and you haven't secured mine. I got a problem with that, Dr. Gibbs.
Yeah, I think that, you also have this issue of, people mischaracterize those who oppose the war in Ukraine as isolationist. I don't think it's isolationism at all, because there are lots of ways the U.S. can relate to the rest of the world. But it just doesn't have to be through war. I think the key issue here is the United States has to figure out a way of relating to the rest of the world in some way other than war, which is the main way the U.S. does this. There are non-military ways to engage in the rest of the world. And I think we need to focus on that more. And, the idea that either you support permanent war or you're an isolationist, like Charles Lindbergh, that's just a fake choice. That's a mischaracterization in my view.
Absolutely it is. But it is designed to push you up against a wall and make you pro-war. No.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
that's like the design on I'm a Russian asset, because I said no, I don't want us to invade Ukraine. I'm not going to support you, NATO. I'm not going to support that. That was the heat that you and Bryce and I took a couple of years at the beginning of last year. I'm like, I told you were like, oh, you're brave. I'm like, no, I'm just going to stay right here. If I live long enough, the tide will turn. If it doesn't turn, in my lifetime, it will turn at some point toward that which is right. Dr. King was right about the Vietnam War. Did he live to see it? No, that's okay. He's still right. The military-industrial complex, unchecked, will be the death of us all. Was he right? Yeah. Did he live to see the outcome? No. But he told you this is where this is going, y'all.
Well, I think the life of Martin Luther King, it does illustrate how the military-industrial complex really is a sacred cow.
Oh, yeah.
When he was calling specifically for racial justice, but really when he really crossed the line was when he criticized the Vietnam War. And that's when what he was saying suddenly became just unacceptable to the establishment. And so that really is the big sacred cow here, is the military-industrial complex. And it remains so today, half a century later.
Well, we're going to continue to push every day and just share these thoughts, and maybe provoke people to think of things, look at things from a different perspective. I'm not going to say that I'm right, you're wrong, no, but just to give people a different perspective. That's why I try to feature you, because I think that you are a man of courage and principle, and you have a lot to say. Oh no, thank you. Dwight McKee, man of courage and principle. You have a lot to say. And we have precious few platforms. Everybody who's on cable news, they say the same thing all the time. All the time. And they're wrong most of the time. What? But I can't worry about that. Dwight, do you have anything you want to say before we go? Dwight, are you gone? He might have gone. But I was just going to let you know that this was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful opportunity to speak with you today. And thank you for responding to my late night entreaty.
Oh, sure. I'm always happy to be on it, Santita.
Oh, look, you're a joy. You're a joy. And please thank Mrs. Gibbs for being so understanding. Blessings to you. Have a wonderful one. Watch out for tonight. We've got this arrest in the way.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. God bless. Thank you, Alex.
Bye-bye.
Everybody. Love you, Morning Stars. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. God bless you. God bless. It's always a joy to be with you. Love you. Thank you, Miss Wallace. All right. Love you all.